Hello everybody, Reggie Time here again with another 10 hands that I played yesterday, I think it was, to look at. I've tried to put players' tendencies in the names. It hasn't worked on all of the hands because Poker Hand Replays is buggy and getting buggier, getting slower and less responsive. So sometimes we're going to have um, reads on players, and sometimes they're just going to be seat 6, seat 10, seat 1, etc. I'll try to remember the reads as and when I can and when they're not displayed, and hope you guys enjoy it. Please don't forget to hit like, share, subscribe, and all those things. And before I start, this is going to be a little bit rambly. Again, if you're not into the rambling, then whatever. Not much you can do about it. My channel, my video, I'll do what the fuck I like. But I've had a few comments lately from people who clearly prefer a more GTO, PIO, however you want to call it, style of play. And that's fine. I have no issue with that whatsoever. People play whichever style they want to play, they use whichever strategies they want to use, and that's completely fine. That's what makes poker such an interesting game. What isn't fine is people being obnoxious fuckwits and expressing that their way is the only way, and if you're not doing it that way, you are some kind of fucking muppet or a charlatan or a thief or a however you want to describe it. I get accused of being a bit of a charlatan for charging for coaching when I'm not even advertising coaching anymore. It's not beneath the videos. I'm not looking to work with people. This is just me sharing some hands that I played with my thoughts, because some people like the channel and I enjoy doing it. So please quit with the questioning me integrity when I'm not even selling any coaching anymore unless someone specifically contacts me to ask. Then of course I will be willing to talk to them, but I'm not out there hawking my services around. So yeah, stop being obnoxious fuckwits and just either close the videos or enjoy the channel for what it is. It's like an old man coffee knit type player describing some hands he's played and why he's played them the way he has. Yeah, so let's get on with the video and try not to ramble too much and just just take it for what it is. If it's not for you, fine, close the video. No one gives a fuck. If you decide to watch it and hate every minute of it, then fine. Did a bit weird, good for you. But quit with the questioning the integrity. By all means, question my play, but not question my integrity, because it's not really the right thing to do, is it? When someone isn't selling something, you're accusing someone of doing something they're not even doing. It's just not right, is it? Anyways, this month so far has been my worst month of the year by some distance. I am only up 40 odd quid as of 10 o'clock this morning, or whenever he's making this video, 20 to 10 this morning, after 13 days play. I was in a hole, like a £250 plus hole. Started off the month running pretty bad, and it's definitely affected my underlying confidence when playing. I've developed a little bit of monster under the bed syndrome and non-believer syndrome. My play's just not been great the last few days. It's not been terrible, but it's not been great. And the last two hands of this video are two perfect examples of what I mean by that. So when we get to them, I'll be able to explain more what I mean by that. But we'll whiz through the hands and get cracking. So this first time we have two aces under the gun. We making it 4x. This is a game we played last lunchtime, and pretty much every player at the table, anytime you see me 4xing, it's because there's no regulars at the table and there's no one doing much 3-betting, which is why we're moving to the 4x open. And two callers, pretty easy c-bet. Probably could have gone bigger. Easy turn barrel. Again, possibly could have gone a little bigger. And then the club comes on the river, and I got somewhat confused because I kind of thought, well, we can still bet for value from like King X. Maybe this guy even calls with worse than King X sometimes. Maybe if he's just in there with a hand like pocket 10s, pocket 9s. whatever. But at the same time, he's going to have a hard time calling anything lower than King X, you would imagine, because the flush gets there. It's not hard for us to have a king. Um, but if we check and he bets, then is he going to be betting a king? Is he going to be betting flushes? Is this guy going to be bad enough just to like bet with worse than a king? Who knows? But I decided that it was going to be too hard to get a large bet called. I didn't want to bet small and face a raise because that would just confuse me too much. So I elected to check, expecting it to go check quite often. And my opponent very quickly bet this amount, which I presumed meant he just bet the 3/4 pot board. And I mean, it was very quick. It was like I checked, boom, within like maybe 2 seconds. And again, I was a little bit confused because it didn't feel like someone would just bet a king that quickly. But also, if he'd just made a flush and the board's paired, then would he quickly bet that much? Would he take a little bit more time? This is more of a timing tell than not timing tell, but normally paying off 3/4 river bets from bad players isn't really my thing with just one pair on this board texture paired board. Flush has got there, but that's the speed at which he did it felt to me like he didn't have too many value hands in his range, because I think he would have taken at least a little bit more time to consider the board texture. If he's got a king, is he going to be betting this big when the flush has got there? If he's got a flush, is he going to be betting this big when the board's paired? If he had pocket fours or pocket sixes, would he not have raised on the flop or the turn? So none of it really made sense. None of it added up. And when whales do things or fishy players do things that don't make sense, don't add up, I get curious. So I did end up making the call, and I called quite quickly, and he randomly showed up with pocket fives, and weird line from him. Get his flop call, I guess. He's a whale on the turn. He's never folding because he has a good shot to go with his straight draw. Good shot to go with his pair. But what's he doing on the river here? I mean, I'd love to hear his line of thinking. Is he sophisticated enough post flop to realise that I'm capped at one pair and turn pocket fives into a bluff? Is he just betting because he's been checked to and he thinks he's got the best hand? Who knows? But it was a nice one to pick up. And had he taken his time and used that sizing, I think there's a good chance I would have folded my hand. But because he bet like literally within probably a second or 2 seconds, it was remarkably quickly. Because he used that timing, it just felt to me like, well, this guy can't be that strong using that sizing so quickly. And yeah, maybe that's complete bullshit by me, but it's what it felt like at the time, and it worked out this time. So this next time we have 2 kings. Again, we are 4xing under the gun. We've had no one, again, just a lot of loose passive players, bad players, no 3-betting, not much 3-betting going on, so we're happy with our 4x. And this player, he does play a few tables. He's like a passive 4-tabler, really passive 4-tabler. So when he 3-bets from the small blind versus my under the gun, I'm already getting nervous with 2 kings. No, obviously we can't fold, but I didn't really want to just 4-bet there. I think like under the gun versus small blind, it's traditionally where the absolute strongest ranges go to war. If I had 2 aces, I'd firmly put him on 2 kings and just be happy to 4-bet, watch him jam and call it off. When we have the kings, makes it slightly more likely that he has the aces. Of course he can have other things, but this guy, I mean, I played with him quite a bit and he just never 3-bets. Just never 3-bets. He's just call and then somewhat like aggressive post flop when he makes a strong hand, etc. But yeah, I mean, I've seen this guy routinely just like call raises with pocket queens, call raises with pocket jacks, call raises with like ace king, ace queen, etc. So when he 4-bets, when he 3-bets, I think he's like extraordinarily weighted towards aces. Of course, it's probably not just aces, but I think it forms an enormous part of his range. It'd be one of those times where it'd be nice to have numbers to know exactly what his 3-bet percentage is. My guess is it's lower than 2, but obviously we can't know that on Sky. But anyway, obviously we call because we can't do much else. He bets flop, I call, and then he just like bombs the turn for full pot. We don't have a spade, So even if he's got something like ace king with the spade, aces with the spade were crushed, queens with the spade he has equity. There's no way this guy doesn't like his hands here, and there's 0% chance that he's just got a complete stonewall airball here. There's a slight concern he maybe has queens with the queen of spades. Um, Maybe he three bets that. I've seen him definitely flat it enough times, but maybe he has that this time. So there's a small chance. But again, when passive players like this super passive player, he's walk up, he's three bet my under the gun open from the small blind pre, then he's bet flop bomb turn. I'm just going to take the low variance route here and just muck my hand. When passive players wake up and start going absolutely crazy, it's usually a good time to take notice and not be a hero with the bluff catching. A lot of you guys will be like, doesn't matter, Edge, it's two kings, you can't fold. But I did. There's no sense like knowing quite a lot about your opponents, developing reads on them, if you're going to ignore them just because you have an overpair. We have an overpair in a three bet pot, and most people just go broke there. And against lots of players, I would just go broke there. But against this dude, I think he's just going to have aces, and extraordinary amount of the time. And the times he doesn't have aces, well, I'm happy to make a small mistake by conceding the pot to him when he takes a line of three bet, bet flop, bomb turn. He's just going to win the pot because most of the time he's just got a hand he really, really likes. And I don't think he does this with jacks, tens, that type of thing. So he doesn't do it with jacks and tens, and he's just got aces and queens, I guess. Probably more aces than queens, and what is the six combinations of each. I think he doesn't always three bet queens, but he does always three bet aces. So he's more heavily weighted to aces, in my opinion. And yeah, I decided to make the big fold to him. Didn't feel good, but it felt right at the time. Now here we have two fours. This is another very, very passive player. He plays a lot on the site. Sky regulars, if I mention his name, will be very familiar with him. I'm not going to mention his name, but he normally plays two tables, limps a hell of a lot, just limp calls a lot. So when he doesn't limp call, when he puts a raise in, I think he's very likely to have. He's the sort of player that like limps most of his range and raises good stuff. If I had to put stats on him, I'd say whatever, like 40/8, something like that, So he's only raising really good stuff, limping the rest, like limp calling. I see him limp call like small pocket pairs all the time, that type of thing. And like limping with rubbish too. So when he does raise, he's got a shortish stack to begin with, but I think it's a mandatory defend at the big blind with two fours. We flop the world, and I make a misclick on the turn here. We check the flop, expecting him to see bet a lot with an overpair here. I'm just going to check raise and look to take the lead in the hand after the check raise. He disappoints us by checking back, and I meant to bet this turn bigger, but for whatever reason the site was being a bit glitchy, and I was trying to click the raise up size button. It wouldn't do it, and I started to panic, and I ended up just clicking bet, and I'm in bet, which obviously you wouldn't be doing in this situation. The min bet isn't like a strategical thing from me. It was very much a fuck me, the site's being slightly unresponsive, click buttons, and then we clicked the min bet, but it didn't work out too bad because he put like a stupid tiny raise in. And then it comes like to an interesting point of we shouldn't really have like a bet three bet range on this board against most players, because it's just really hard to like have draws in this situation. So when we bet three bet this, we've just always got 5x or better. Maybe this player doesn't realise that though, and because his raise is so small, we need to put a three bet in. Fortunately, the site behaved itself and it allowed me to put a three bet in, but it didn't get to the size I wanted to get to, because we'll find out in a minute. This is a mistake from me. The first min bet was like a mistake due to a glitch. This is a mistake due to me not making it big enough, because we want to be able to jam the river in this situation. We want to raise turn. If he calls, we want to be jamming the river. He did call, and now we look at the pot size. It's 7.35. He's got 8.25 left. That £3 on the turn was a mistake. That was about £4 or even £3.60. We would have had like less than pot to shove on the river rather than over betting. Then I decided to just, because we hadn't set up the remainder, I should just have shoved still anyway. But I think like because the kings come, when he takes the line he took, I was pretty much putting him on stuff like pocket tens, pocket jacks, pocket eights, that type of thing. Not sure he'd raise the turn with pocket eight, so I think he's got like an overpair to the nine. Doubt he's got kings or aces and plays it this way. So when the king came, I'm like, well, I haven't set up the pot to jam, and all of a sudden the king's a scare card to the types of hand I thought he had, like mostly stuff like tens, jacks. Oh yeah, just tens and jacks basically. Maybe queens once in a while. But because the king came and I hadn't set stacks up to jam, I elected to go with a small bet just to make it really hard for him with his over pairs between the nine and the king. Yeah, but the turn's a fuck up there. Bet the turn properly. We can just shove the river regardless of what it is. Didn't want him hero folding tens or jacks basically. Hero or maybe queens. So we just bet three. And he did have the tens, and we definitely managed to somehow leave £5.25 on the table with a full house, despite the guy only starting the hand with 11 quid. So it was a poorly played river from me, and it was a poorly played turn. We had the best hand, and I think we won just about the minimum, which is piss poor really. Here we have, this was like a deep table. We haven't won lots of money. This guy hasn't won lots of money. I think it was just one of the Sky deep tables. We open 5-4, suited on the button, get called by an aggressive player who's too loose. We flop the open ender, easy C bet, happy days. We turn the straight, which is delightful stuff. We bet, and then that happens, and also, I'm not quite as delighted. I mean, we still have a really strong hand. We're obviously going nowhere, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility that the dude has 8-9. So I don't think we can like just three bet here. It does kind of like part of me wanted to three bet because to deny equity to like sets, two pairs, flush draws, etc. But we're too deep. I mean, if we were 100 blinds deep here, I'd just jam and I wouldn't even think about it. But we're not. We're like started the hand close to 200 blinds deep. So with non-nuts, so without the nuts, do I really want to get another 150 blinds in on this turn? More than 150 blinds, probably 170, 180 blinds in on this turn. I decided that I didn't want to, and also I'm happy just like calling lots and lots of rivers too. There's not many rivers I'm not going to call on. But if ever there was a river not to call on, I think this is it. He's check call flop, check raise turn, bombed this river. Now we just have like nothing much more than a bluff catcher. It's incredibly unlikely he's doing this with two pairs or sets. We have the worst possible straight. So it's like, what do we beat here? We don't beat flushes anymore. We don't beat 8-9 if you had that. If you somehow had fucking Jack 8, which seems very, very unlikely. We don't beat that anymore either. We don't beat flushes. So yeah, it's a weird spot, and I think folding's by far the best play here, and that is not what I did. I decided to call instead. Pretty big mistake in my opinion, because just like, what do we beat that takes this line? I mean, unless he is an aggressive fish, so maybe he can have some random bluffs from time to time, but aggressive fish or not, on boards that are this connected, like 4 lines to a straight, there's like potential flushes out there, etc. It's not a spot where even aggressive fish get out of line too much, in my opinion. Certainly not with a check raise turn bomb river line. But I did call, and we were being free roll from the turn onwards, and he got there, and that was disappointing. I think I played the hand fine until the river, and I think it's just such an easy river fold. I didn't do it, and I just decided to withdraw £11.45 from the Bank of Reggie. and spread it around the Sky Poker economy, which is very pleasant of me, very in line with my general socialist values. Here we have a queen and a jack offsuit. Don't think I remember this hand. Maybe will when you see the flop. I remember, yes. This player was completely unknown. I'd never seen him before. The only reads we have is that he isn't fully stacked. We're playing four-handed. Queen jack off's obviously a mandatory cut-off open. Our opponent just rips it in here with, presumably, tons and tons of hands that are significantly worse than ours. We have the trivially easy call. And he turns up with pocket fours. And the only reason I put this hand in is not to show that, oh, look at this, it's a cooler, or, you know, look how bad I run, etc. It's just put in because I think it's really funny that some dude flops bottom set and just, like, overbet jams for whatever, like 8x pot. And somehow has the good fortune to have his opponent flopping two pairs. Because if I'd just flopped one pair there, maybe if I had like ace queen, king queen, I'd have to call. But anything else there, it's just an easy fold. Luckily for this dude, I had like one of the few hands that can snap call that he's ahead of. And yeah, good for him. Good for him. We have the ace-king suited here. This player is a very good regular in my opinion. He plays mostly in the evenings. I've been chatting with him quite a lot at the tables. Seems like a nice guy. Professional micro-stakes poker player apparently. And according to him, and I have no reason to disbelieve him because I've witnessed a lot of it myself, he is just running insanely bad in all-ins. Well, just insanely bad in general. He's reporting he's having his like worst month, 2 months in like his entire career. I do feel for the guy because he does seem to be running absurdly badly, but nevertheless he's a good regular. We obviously open the ace king. He three bets the button. I don't think he gets massively out of line, but at the same time we have ace king suited in a reg versus reg situation, cut off versus button, so it's a mandatory four bet. He piles it in. At this point, I'm not that happy with my hand, but we 4-bet folding ace-king suited would just be bonkers against a good regular who's on the button. Just, you know, we have blockers to aces and kings. Of course, he can have queens sometimes. He can have some, like, 5-bet bluffs maybe with some, like, weak ace-x type hands or what have you. I don't think he does that too often. But, basically, we're flipping against a lot of his range. We're beating some of his like, bluffs, of course. Don't anything to be said other than call. No need to overanalyze the situation. He had two kings, so he was in remarkably good shape. So it's good time to test the theory of just, is he running that bad? And unfortunately for him, he continued to run really badly in all-ins. I was pleased to take it at this point in the session. I think this was like not yesterday's session. This was like the Monday evening session. At that point in the session, I was like down £40, and yeah, it was nice to get a win. It didn't feel good to get it in that way, to like get it in with just like 30% equity and suck out on a decent bloke, on a good guy. But at that point, I was happy to take the wins any which way they came. Here we have ace jack suited under the gun, and this hand's fucked up. This is poker hand replays. I'd put this hand in 2 or 3 times, and there's a glitch in the system that didn't show up. It just hasn't let me show the hand the way it played out. I specifically min raised this hand under the gun because this dude, if I'd read it 3x, his jam, which I was expecting, would not have reopened the betting, and I wanted the betting reopening. So this hand I put in mostly, well, number one, because something weird happens, and number two, because I think it's a good example of when playing less tables, just noticing little things like this and reacting accordingly can make quite a big difference to how well you do in the game. Had I been playing more tables, I maybe wouldn't have noticed that he had not enough to make a full raise out of the small blind, a full raise all in. And I would have 3x'd it, and then the betting wouldn't have been reopened when he jammed, and I could have been left in an awkward multi-way situation with ace jack. So, for example, I 3x here, and I know we get some callers. He jams, he calls, and then we just got to call like 20 pence more, and then be in a weird multi-way spot with ace jack. So we did this so we could reopen the betting. That's why we done it, and it works out to be an absolute charm. We do get called. He does go all in. This player does call. I reopen the betting, and this is where the hand just goes to pot now, because Poker Hand Replays just considers him all in too, which isn't what happened. He actually back raised jams, so like this guy folds, this guy's already all in. And what he did, we didn't just see his cards there for the 79 pence. He back raised jammed his full stack in, whichever it was, like 16 quid extra. We snapped off. This guy was a monster whale. He was just playing almost every hand, doing loads of weird shit. Ace Jack suited was just going to be way too strong, even though it's like over 75 bigs. Going to be way too strong. So he's back raised jammed, even though it doesn't say it. We snapped off, and we got a nice clean run out, I think, and dragged down the tasty pot. And the only reason I put that hand in is just to like extol the benefits of paying attention at the tables. Had we not noticed he had like less than 4 big blinds, then this hand maybe would have played a bit differently in terms of like we'd have flop top pair still, but we maybe wouldn't have got any more action from this dude. But because we made the min raise, which allowed us to reopen the betting when he goes all in, it worked out really well for us, and I was really quite pleased with myself. I gave myself a pat on the back for that one. Here we have Reggie's favourite hand again. Wow, I just referred to myself in the third person. I am a fucking bell end. Yeah, sorry about that. Cock. I'm a cock, I'm a cock, I'm a cock. So anyways, we've raised versus a bad regular. And the reason I think this player's a bad regular is new to me anyway. If he's new to the site, maybe he's moved up, maybe he's moved from some other game format, I'm not sure. He doesn't buy in full. He doesn't reload if he drops down. He like buys him for 16 quid at the 20 tables. Haven't seen him at 30 And if he drops down, if he loses money, he doesn't reload. Strikes me as someone who is maybe a tournament player who's transferring to cash. That's, if I had to guess, that'd be my closest guess as to why he does what he does. I see a lot of tournament players that transition, they just don't do the auto reload thing, and they don't necessarily like playing 100 blinds deep, but that is just a guess, I don't know. But also what makes him, he doesn't do a ton of 3-betting pre-flop, and then he uses like very large sizings every time he bets post-flop, so he doesn't like to split his range with his sizings. He's just kind of got his range that he bets, and he bets big with, or he checks. Just seems like a pretty limited player to me. Anyway, we flopped top set, and he'd been like, I'd been in this session. This is like, no, I wouldn't always take this line, but I've been raising quite often, missing boards, and he'd been just like potting versus me quite often. So that the current dynamic between us was, I'd raise, he'd call, I'd miss, I'd check, he'd pot, I'd fold. So I was keen to try and continue that trend here, and I was contemplating check raising, or maybe check calling. So we do check. He does just about pot it. I elect to just call this time. Maybe he probably 3-bets queens pre-flop. He can't really have ace queen very often. He can't really have ace 10 too often. Pocket tens, we're going to get all the money from that anyway. It just felt to me for check raised here, he'd just better fold an awful lot of hands, because like, what can he really have? We've even got the ace of diamonds, so I don't think he can be that strong here. I think a lot of the time he's just going to be fucking around with maybe under pairs or some complete bluffs, just trying to continue the theme of me check, he bet, me fold. So that was my thinking, so I elected to go with quite an elaborate slow play here. Obviously a completely safe turn. We check. He like slightly overbets, and again here, I said he couldn't have ace queen, ace 10 very often, pocket queens or pocket tens, but when he chooses this sizing, I'm starting to think he probably is somewhat strong. So those hands, even though there's not many combinations of them, they start to form a much larger part of his range, of course. So again, we could raise here, hoping he does have like a 2 pair plus hand. If he's only got 1 pair here, he's going to be folding pretty much all the time to a check raise, you would imagine. Not that worried about him potentially having a draw. I mean, if he's got diamonds then, and he gets there, then I guess we're going to lose a big pot. Again, I just wanted to continue the theme of letting him think he can push me around all the time. So we just call. River the full house. We check again, hoping he's going to bet again. At this point, we're just hoping. It wouldn't make sense for us to go check call, bet here. There's just very few hands you would imagine you could call with. If he's got a queen himself, if he has got a hand like king queen that he's just somehow managed to overbet the turn with, which is incredibly unlikely, and I don't think he does. Or if he has more likely, say the queen 10, which we don't have any blockers for, then he's going to bet this river anyway. So there was absolutely no reason to do anything other than check to him again, playing floor for what's been like post flop. He jammed. We obviously snap called. And we sucked out. I didn't think I was sucking out. When I was checking and calling, I thought I was like laying the perfect trap for someone who maybe overvalues hands post flop and uses not great, not very thoughtful sizings. But it turned out we needed the queen on the river. I didn't think we did. Turned out we did. And we dragged down a very tasty £70 pot. Here we have 2 3s. Don't remember this one yet. Maybe we'll want to see the flop again. No. Yes, I do. I do remember this now. The player in seat 2 is, in my opinion, a decent regular. He is more creative than your average regular in such that he doesn't just always do the standard thing. Like most players will always do the standard thing. They have an overpaired out of position, they will 3-bet. If they flop a set, they will check raise. If they have an overpair in a 3-bet pot, they will c-bet. This dude seems pretty good at mixing his strategy up and making him difficult to read, difficult to play against. I don't like playing against him very much. I think he's a decent player. He's not excessively loose, he's not excessively aggressive. I just think he plays, in my opinion, he plays really well. And it's never a great deal of fun playing against him. But when we flop bottom set, then it's going to make life a lot easier for us. So he leads out here. There's no draws that he can really have, like ace deuce, ace 4, 6-4 suited maybe, but he isn't a small blind, so I don't think he has like the 6-4 suited to the world. He leads out here. I think he's going to have like Jack X, decent amount. Maybe he's flopped a set of 5s. Maybe he's flopped a set of jacks that he hasn't 3-bet pre. But I think he's probably going to have a relatively strong range, very, very few bluffs in it, just mostly made hands, of which went ahead of most of them with our 2 3s. I wouldn't rule out him having like overpairs here. I mean, he doesn't have them very often. He 3-bets them most of the time. As I said, this player is capable now and again of just slipping a call in and then taking some interesting lines. And I mean interesting in a sincere way, not in a patronising or condescending way. So I'm very confident we have the best hand here, but I don't really see too much value in raising. I don't think he's got like a bet calling range here too often that going to be doing great against. So I just call and allow him to keep value betting worse, hopefully. That was the plan. 8 doesn't change anything on the turn. Very unlikely he's leading an 8 on the flop, so very happy just to call again. 6 on the river, again, doesn't really change very much. And he bets again here. Now all of a sudden I'm thinking, right, we probably have the best hand, so we're not worried about losing the pot. But do we raise here? And this is one of the hands that we talked about at the start of the video, where it's kind of like my confidence issue would be the wrong word. I'm not lacking confidence in like my game or anything like that, but I'm lacking confidence in like, because a lot of the big pots I've played this month have kind of gone against me. I've been less keen to make big pots with albeit strong hands, but not nutted hands, have been turned into like a bit of a like station, would be the wrong word, but not value betting anywhere near or value raising as well as I could do, and also maybe not making quite as many decent folds as I'm used to making, or folds that feel like they're decent. Because this should just be a race here, simple as that. We lose to pocket fives that he plays this way, but you know, it should just be a raise. And I elect to just call, which is unfortunate. I mean, I don't think he would have called a raise. My theory at the time was like, fine, we probably have the best hand, but if I raise here, what worse hands call? I mean, even if he slow played a hand like aces or kings pre, is he going to call to a jam here? I mean, maybe, because we don't rep very much. I don't know, it's just a weird hand. It's a weird hand, and yeah, I didn't raise, and I think perhaps I should, and let him decide with what his calling ranges. I shouldn't be here worrying about what he's going to call with. That's his problem, not mine. I think we should raise. I didn't, and he actually turned up with pocket queens. Now, whether he'd call the river there if I raised, who knows? I genuinely don't know. Couldn't answer that question. It's an interesting question, because he's kind of massively, well, not massively, but he's kind of under-repped. He's had a hand that he could have 3-bet pre, and then he's just taken a bet line with. I like it some of the time against some players. Would he have called? Not sure. If you are watching, and you'll know who you are, I doubt you are, but if you are, let me know if you would have called if I jammed. And I'm fully aware that gives license to all kinds of troll comments now coming in, pretending to be him and seeing whether they would or wouldn't. So yeah, if you watch this, don't comment below the video. Just let me know at the table if you would have called with the queens or not. And let's move on. I think this last hand's going to be last hand. Yeah, it's the last hand of the video, and this is like the other side of the mistakes that I feel have started to creep into my game slightly. We have a player like kind of loose. He raises good stuff, limps with bad stuff. That's kind of how it works with him. Not entirely sure how wide his good stuff range is in terms of like how deep does it go down the pocket pairs, because I know he limps some pocket pairs and like some broadways. Don't know exactly how. I haven't got that super well defined. Maybe he limps like queen jack and sevens lower than the sevens, and maybe he raises eights plus and king queen suited etc plus. Don't know exactly, but he has 4x from effectively middle position, well in the button calls, and we have an interesting spot here straight away, because I don't really want to get jacks in pre-flop. If he is at like the top of his range here, then we're going to be in pretty rough shape, but at the same time I don't want to be out of position to two players, especially a player that's playing almost any two. Now if we can get through this dude and we can just like stack our post flop on most boards versus this dude, so I wasn't sure whether to squeeze here or just call. I mean, I was very like 70 to 80%. Yeah, we need to squeeze. But I was somewhat concerned that he'd 4x it under the gun. From middle position, and you know that is an indicator that he's got a much better than average hand given how he plays. But anyways, we did go with the squeeze. He called, and the wheel folded. So it's all gone horribly wrong all of a sudden. The guy who we think's got a reasonably strong range calls our squeeze, and the wheel folds, which is completely the opposite of what we wanted to happen, but it is what it is. So we get to a flop, pretty good flop. We lead out quite big. I'm hoping to target hands like pocket eights, pocket nines, pocket tens here, stuff like that. And then just deny equity if he's got hands like ace queen, ace king, that type of thing. And he min raises, and this is where, in my opinion, I am not playing well, because all kinds of sirens and buzzers and red flags and any other like metaphor you want to use were going off in my head right now. I was like, right, job's fucked here. We're beat. We're absolutely beat. He's never doing this with the worst hand. Then I started thinking, oh, maybe he does this with nines. Maybe he does this with tens. Maybe he does it with eights, nines, tens. He doesn't, does he? He just has, like probably Queens, Kings and Aces here that decided not to 4-bet pre. It's just not the line. I mean, you're playing against a player who your nose range is quite strong to begin with because of the pre-flop discussion we had. And we've 3-bet pre-flop to 16 bigs. We've C-bet for another 20 bigs and he's min-raised us. And you could argue there's as many combinations of, well, probably more combinations of 8s, 9s and 10s in his range than there is Queens, Kings and Aces because he called pre rather than 4-bet. So he has like all the combinations probably of 8, 9s and 10s and less of the combinations of Queens, Kings and Aces because surely 4-bets them some of the time pre-flop. So you could argue that. But then the other side of the argument is, does he raise 8s, 9s and 10s here? Like he's always going to raise slow played over pairs. Is he always going to raise his smaller pairs to jacks? It just felt to me like a spot where I should just get the fuck out of the way. Our opponent's showing like significant strength. He's a generally passive-ish player who's kind of face up. So I knew all these things. I knew he's passive. I know he's face up post flop, but I just decided, well, maybe he's got like a smaller overpair that either he just jams a turn with and we just call it off, or we just got to check all the way down and we get to beat. So I didn't make the fold. I think I should have. You know, it's extremely exploitable to fold an overpair to 3-bet pot to a min raise. But if it's against an opponent that isn't looking to exploit people in that way, then it's nowhere near as big of a problem in my opinion. But I couldn't find the fold. Found the call instead. The 8 comes on the turn, so if we did have like 8s, 9s and 10s on the flop, it's just another fucking hand we can't beat. He jams. I call anyway because I'm a fuckwit. And he did have the queens, so I guess maybe queens is the only one. I mean, maybe he just 4-bet kings and aces pre. Maybe queens is like the only hand that's better than us pre flat calls. Who knows? Anyway, we didn't get there, and we lost more money, in my opinion, than we ought to in that hand. And it's just kind of, those last 2 hands have been symptomatic of my month where I've been making mistakes by not raising thinly enough for value, or by not value betting thin enough. I've made a few dodgy checks on rivers where we should just be value betting. So I'm missing value in some spots where when I'm playing well I don't miss value, and I've been paying off. Not like frequently, I've not been like splashing chips all over the place, but there's been a few spots where I paid off where perhaps when I'm playing well I shouldn't have paid off or wouldn't pay off. And those things add up. If I've missed, say, 60 or 70 quid worth of value this month and I paid off another 60 or 70 quid worth, then all of a sudden that would have put my monthly profit up at like 180-ish rather than the 40 quid it's currently at. So the mission for the second half of the month is to like get rid of the monster under the bed syndrome that's just crept into my game a little bit. Slow down, play a few less tables, focus more for the time being, and just focus on like playing really, really well, listening to my instincts more rather than kind of doubting. Like this time, instinctively, I was going to just fold the flop. I didn't, and it ended up costing me an extra £15. The hand previously with the pocket threes, I could have raised a river. Maybe he calls, maybe he doesn't. But maybe it's cost me, say, maybe he calls half of the time if I raise a river. And if I raise a river, say, another £10, maybe it's cost me another £5 there. So in EV, these last 2 hands, well, not in EV, but potentially could have been an extra £20 or better off had I played these last 2 hands differently. And that's definitely been creeping into my game a little bit. So yeah. Mission for the rest of the month, play better than I have been. I don't set financial targets, but it'd be nice if we could somehow get our way. Well, not somehow, it shouldn't be that difficult if I play well. If we could somehow get our way to £300 by the end of the month, like win another £250 by now with a bit of rate back and whatever, you get past 300 profit for the month. I'd be happy because it's been a pretty rubbish month so far in terms of like how I've ran and how I've played. I think I'm probably slightly fortunate to be up at all, to be in profit at all, given the hole that I was in. So I'm not complaining. These things happen, but yeah, we need to improve, and hopefully that will start as of today. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Not sure when I'll be back with the next video. This is Wednesday. I'm making it. I think I'm just going to have a couple of days of just focusing on my play and not concentrating too much on like capturing hands to record. So maybe it might be as late as next Monday before the next video comes out. It depends. Some interesting things happen between now and then. Who knows, we might knock one out on Friday. Certainly won't be Saturday or Sunday because the wife's at home all day and I don't make videos when she's at home. So if a video doesn't come out Friday, it's very likely to be Monday. But take care everyone, have a great few days and we'll see you soon. Bye bye for now.